My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Welcome back to I Want That Too, the podcast where Disney merch meets Disney history. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and joining me as always is the lovely Lauren Hersey.
Hi, Jim. Good evening. Good day.
Mm-hmm.
And today's episode is truly special because we have an absolutely legendary guest. Today we are talking with none other than Garner Holt, the man behind some of the most iconic animatronics in the world.
Oh, that is sure. And honestly, if you've been to a Disney park or not, so that's or to be honest, almost any major theme park and thought, wow, that's an amazing animatronic. Odds are that Garner Holt Productions had something to do with it. But before we bring on the man to talk about his career, we need to do a quick shout out to our sponsor. And this episode of I Want That Too is brought to you by touringplans.com. If you're planning a trip to Disney or Universal, you want to skip the lines and make the most of the trip, you need to get touringplans.com. You can get personalized trip planning tools, crowd insights, and more. Head on over to touringplans.com to start planning for your next magical vacation.
Yes, thank you, Touring Plans, for sponsoring today's episode. All right, Jim, let's get into it. I'm really excited to welcome today's guest, Garner Holt. He is founder of Garner Holt Productions. And if you are a theme park fan, I know for sure you have seen his work. So thank you, Garner, for joining us today.
I'm really glad to be here. It's a great podcast. I'm appreciative that you asked me to be here. It's kind of fun.
Lauren and I were pre-gaming before we got started here, and it occurred to me that it was 50 years ago this month that you really did your first thing, the haunted house, back in October of '74. Is that correct?
Little less than 50 years ago. This last, actually, when I say it's 47 years ago, this last July 25th, that I put my name on the garage and said Garner Holt Productions, and somehow I was able to take over the garage. I don't know how my parents let me do that, but yeah, I had a haunted house probably a couple of years before that. So I guess, regardless of wanting to not realize how old I am, I guess it's about 50 years ago. Yeah.
Wow, that's wild. Okay, so let's go back even a little bit further. So, for anybody that's listening that may not be familiar, can you just start by telling us a little bit about what is Garner Holt Productions and what it is that you specialize? We teased a little bit of animatronics, but tell us about the business.
Well, in a nutshell, Garner Holt Productions is, I believe we're the largest animatronic producer in the world. We've done more figures for Disney and Universal and all the other parks than anybody has. We have about 470 figures, I believe, in the Disney parks worldwide. We have probably 160 or so in the Universal parks. We have, and then also in addition to those parks, we worked in 36 different countries. So we've done things like in Europa Park and Efteling, which are some of the largest parks in Europe, in Germany, and we have done things, scads of things in Japan and Korea, and just all over the place. And and then in addition to the theme parks, we're known for our history with Chuck E. Cheese. If people have been to a Chuck E. Cheese, they've done the Studio C version. We did about 550 something shows worldwide for with Chucky and a couple other animated pieces and cameras and things like that. So we've done and then mix in museums, casinos, themed restaurants. We've done a lot of figures, probably over I know it's over 5,000 figures.
Oh,
worldwide.
wow. And I definitely know Chuck E. Cheese. I got three little kids, so
Mhm.
I've had our birthday parties and everything. That's so cool. So my daughters, that I was telling her that we were doing the interview, and I said, "Do you have a question for Garner Holt?" And she said she wanted to know, what did you go to college for to be able to make animatronics?
Well, I never went to college at all, and um,
Oh no, now she's gonna tell me. He did it.
I hung around the college and did some things in their machine shop and things like that out at Valley College here, but I never got any kind of degree or anything. In fact, don't tell her this one, but I tested out of high school in my junior year. I didn't even go to my senior year in high school. So they had back in my day, they had a test called proficiency exam. And if you could pass it, you could skip your senior year. So no, I was immediately in business out of my garage, and that was I had a lot of things to do, and I was actually running my haunted house business in Southern California here before I was out of high school.
Well,
Wow.
it might be worth it now to talk about your first really significant animatronic figure, and of course, probably the very year you should have been a senior in high school, Uncle Sam. Is that right for the bicentennial?
Yeah, so when I just to tell a little bit about my history as a child, I always tell people I was born into a horse family.
Mm.
My parents were horse people. My uncles were rodeo people. They world champion rodeo people. We had another uncle had a riding stable. And my parents, I was on the back of a horse from about 2 months old to about 10 years old, and I have pictures to prove that the 2 months old. But
Okay.
the I would come home and watch the Munsters and the Universal, like Frankenstein, everything else. And one night on a Disney program in Sunday night, and I remember it like it was yesterday, I saw a thing pop up about this haunted mansion at Disneyland. And I ran into my parents' room. They said, "There's this place called the Haunted Mansion," and I just saw them go through it on a tour. Kirk Russell and others. You can still see it on YouTube, of course. And I said, I said, can you please take me to this place called Disneyland? And that was their biggest mistake because they wanted me to be a veterinarian.
Hmm.
All of my family wanted a veterinarian in the family very badly. They wanted to send me to, it's like, Garner's going to go to college and become a veterinarian. And so I went to Disneyland. I told them on the way home, leaning over the back seat of the car, I said, leaning there, I said, "Mom, Dad, I'm going to build Disneylands. I'm going to build the things at Disneyland." And they said, "Yeah, sure you are. But shortly thereafter, I started in the garage trying to tinker. I wanted to do a human figure like Lincoln, so I started with hinges and wood and wire, and tried to develop a little controller for it. And there was no internet then, so you had to kind of go to the library and things. But I talked to a lot of people, got some people to help here and there, but I didn't even have enough money to build the frame for Uncle Sam, or I didn't have the steel. So I cut
Hmm.
down some of the fence posts in the back of my dad's ranch with a hacksaw and used the metal post to make the legs for my
Oh,
animated figure, and used door hinges for his knees. And so I built a little figure called Uncle Sam for the bicentennial 1976. And that was while I was still in high school. And they let me do some things in my high school classes, like I wrote the script in my English class, and I worked on the plans for him in my drafting class, and the electronics teacher helped me build a controller for him. So all the kind of schools kind of involved, but it was a really big deal for the school, and it actually got national publicity. We had like Channel 7 came out and filmed it. We put it in a mall. It was in the mall in San Bernardino here, and it displayed in the mall for about a week and a half, and a lot of publicity done on it. And that was my first animatronic figure, and that was the beginning of the history of GHP.
mm.
That is so cool. So then where did it go from there? Like, did you start getting more attention with other projects, or like how did you really make it into the business?
Yeah, I started trying to work with the malls for like the haunted house. I tried to, I did some Christmas display things and started to kind of get into this display stuff, and I the really big thing happened. So I my Uncle Sam wasn't satisfactory to me, so I tore him apart and I rebuilt him another one. And I was able to have some money from the business that I had going. So I put together a more advanced version of him. It took about a year, and then I was just finishing up high school, and the kids in my radio TV production class suggested I film him and send a film to Walt Disney Productions and say, this is my animated figure. And I didn't really even want to do it. I thought they're not going to care. They don't, I'm just a nobody, And so we borrowed the equipment, brought it to the house. I didn't have a background for Uncle Sam, so I had a blue bedspread on my bed, so I hung it up in the garage behind him, so there'd be a background, and I filmed him, and I sent the film to Imagineering. It was called WED at the time. And a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call, and my grandma came into my room and said, Garner, there's somebody on the phone from Disney who wants to talk to you. And I said, I about fell over, and lady said, we'd like to send a couple engineers out to see your Uncle Sam. And I couldn't believe it. And one of the people that they said was they got two people out there. They're both Disney legends. One of them was Wathel Rogers, and the other one was Wayne Jackson. And I had read about Wathel in the National Geographic 1964 World's Fair edition of National Geographic, and it talked about Lincoln and Wathel. So they came out to the house and came in the garage, and my mom gave them coffee and cookies, and and they came in the garage and saw Uncle Sam. And so that was the very beginning of a relationship with them, because I said to Wathel on his way out, I said, well, I've showed you my workshop. I said, is there any way you can show me your workshop? And so they invited me for an entire day out to Imagineering, and they gave me a royal treatment touring all of WED, and introduced me to all the old timers that were there, Blaine Gibson, Mark Davis, all the people that were the cornerstone of Disney. And I felt like a celebrity at the time, just going through the place. But that was the beginning, and that was kind of the beginnings of a relationship with them.
So did you then do a Disney project? Like, was a Disney project your first official project, or did you continue to work with the Malls?
No, I didn't get any work. You see, at that time, I was trying to be able to work at Disney, and I wanted to be an Imagineer more than anything in the world. And the more I talked to them, I just kept talking to them. They'd come out and see haunted houses. They'd come out and see this. They'd come out and see that. And the verdict was, we don't know what to do with you. We don't have an opportunity because you're 17 years old and you don't have an education. You don't have any engineering experience. You don't have anything. You've built some cool stuff, but we don't know how you can be an Imagineer. And they said, what you really need to do is go to college and get a degree in engineering or something. And then you'll have a background that when you come here, you have the opportunity to move forward and possibly, work and get into management eventually or something. You'll have a background, but you don't have anything. And I was not a good student, so I really was not happy with that. And I was very depressed, and I thought, well, this is just not going to work. And I told my parents, I said, I'm going to try to start my own thing and start my own business. And if that works, then great. If not, I'll just go back to school, whether I like it or not, and try to get a job at Imagineering someday, And so that was how I embarked on a business. And that was the best thing that I ever did, was to not pursue just becoming a tiny spoke in a very, very large wheel. I've been able to work on all the things that I could have ever dreamed of at this point, and I wouldn't have had those opportunities working for somebody else.
I love that part. And what I especially love about this story is if you think about where we are now, where the amount of work that you're doing for the Disneys and the Universals, or for that matter, you're sort of the keeper of the flame. When you think about all of the stuff you took from Tahunga, all of the stuff that Imagineering used to use to build figures, and now that resides at your facility in Redlands.
Well, yeah, a lot of it does. When they were shutting Tahunga down, which was the facility they used to call Tahunga, which was the facility they built most of the figures at. They still build figures themselves.
Mhm.
They have a small facility, over by around 1401 on that campus. But I'm thankful that they give me the opportunity to build things when they get to the point where there's more to build than where it's hard to handle internally, and they just decide to farm it out. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to do that, and have enjoyed working with them, doing a lot of figures for a long time.
Can you talk about any of the figures that you've worked on for them or any other theme park? I don't know what you can talk about or not.
Well, there's a lot of things that you have to be careful of. I mean, we've done a lot recently that I can't mention because even though it's technically not open yet. So, but the things that a lot of things that people know about what we have done, I can kind of talk about them because it's no secret. It's been out there for a long time. We have done a lot of iconic things for Disney. I started doing parade float characters, which, the Parade of Dreams and a lot of that kind of stuff. And, Hercules Parade, Mulan Parade, Lion King stuff. Did a lot of parade float stuff. And then when the big opportunity came, when so I dabble in all kinds of little things for them, and the big opportunity came when I did the Haunted Mansion overlay in 2001, which was Jack Skellington and really all the animated pieces in that whole show. A lot of the scenic too. I mean, we did the Christmas tree and Pumpkin Mountain and a lot of the major scenic stuff, and Oogie Boogie and
Oh my gosh, you
well,
did those. They're incredible. I just saw it for the first time
yeah.
last fall when we were at Disneyland, and then it
Mhm.
was already up whenever we were out there for D23. It was incredible.
Yeah, then we were asked to do that for Japan, so we did that for Japan as well. And there were a lot more figures there because they had a lot of Sallys and they had a couple of Jacks instead of just one Jack, and then eventually put a Sally back in this mansion here. But so then we started working, doing a lot for Imagineering, and we just did all kinds of stuff. We did 4 Buzz Lightyear rides. We did the Nemo the submarine. We did Small World overlays. We did replacement figures for Jungle Cruises and Tiki Rooms and Fantasyland, and um, I did Meteors for Space Mountain. We did like Mystic Manor, Cars, Radiator Springs, 2 mermaid rides. Not all the figures in all of these we did. Like Cars, we did 12 of the cars, and then we did in Mermaid we did about probably 85% of the characters in there, and then Monsters Inc. we did in Japan, we did out here, and it just goes on. I just sometimes I can't even remember it all if it's not listed in front of me. But there's just been a lot of really fun stuff.
I have to ask though, was the Haunted Mansion doing that overlay, was that like a full circle moment for you? Like, since it's what you wanted?
It was surreal
Hmm.
because that was the place I dreamed about, and as a kid, and then here I'm working in the mansion. I'm putting figures in the mansion, my animatronics in the mansion, and we had the run of the place, and we were putting it all in and for weeks, and it was just unbelievably surreal. It was kind of, and then to meet, I used to listen to the first when I was in 4th grade, there was or 4th or 5th grade, there was a time where I played a record of the Haunted Mansion. My mom got at Kmart, and there was the voice on it was remember the voice, Jim, the one that the ghost host on the record.
Oh, Paul Frees. Yes.
No,
Yep.
not Paul Frees. It was another one did the record. But anyhow, I'll
Okay.
think of his name. But anyhow,
Mhm.
he came out here to do an event for us, and
Mhm.
he signed my record, and it was he's the one that did Henry the Bear and
Oh, we
Pete
just lost
Renaday. He
him.
just passed
Pete
away.
Renaday. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just all these connections with people that worked on and meeting Blaine Gibson and people that sculpted and Mark Davis, and it
Mhm.
was just unbelievable to get into the mansion that way, and be able to see my childhood thing that I love so much.
And the fact that that was done as kind of a one-off in 2001, and now it's a holiday tradition at the parks, and people make special trips just to experience Haunted Mansion Holiday.
Oh yeah, you know what's funny about that is, I mean, you all know, Disney's history. Like Fantasmic. When they did Fantasmic, we did, of course, the dragon that burned up.
Mhm.
Wasn't our fault, by the way.
There we
Um,
go.
Ran fine for 14 years, but
Mhm.
when they did that show, they thought it would last a season. One
Yep.
season, and I mean, it's become this crazy thing. Well, same with Haunted Mansion Holiday. They thought that was just they. We were all standing around out there the day that it opened, watching people, queue up, and we're all, some of the people that had worked on it are like, oh, I hope people like this, and I hope it'll last more than this year,
Yeah.
and it's just gone crazy, So you just never know how upfront how things are going to be accepted, but it's such a wonderful, wonderful show.
Now, just a few moments ago, when you were listing stuff that you worked on, you mentioned Tiki. And when we get back from this break, we're going to have Garner talk about one of the cooler projects you guys are working on right now, which is you make your own Tiki animatronics, something that you showcased at D23 just earlier this year. So hang on there, folks. We'll get to that in just a moment.
All right, and we're back. Like Jim had mentioned, we're hopefully going to talk about some tiki birds. And when I was walking around D23 and looking at all the booths, I met a fabulous young lady who was
Mhm.
working at your booth. And I mean, I think it was the Baby Yoda, the Grogu animatronic that drew me in. But once we started talking, she was telling us that, I'm guessing that there are a lot of kids or even adults that maybe want to be an Imagineer one day or want to make their own animatronic. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that project kind of came to fruition?
Yeah, we, as part of what I do here at this shop, we have been in the building we're in right now for about 6 years, and it's a big sprawling building. And for 40 or for not 40, for 30 years, I would say, I have taken tours through my shops. Everybody always, even though I was in a smaller building, everybody always wanted to know what was going on in my building. He's building dinosaurs in there. I would take kids and Cub Scouts and Girl Scouts and college kids and doctors and lawyers and anybody that wanted to tour, and they'd always leave with a smile on their face, and they'd always, say, "Oh, I wish I could work here. This is so cool." So about 5 years ago, I got together with some educators, and we put together a whole concept for education using animatronics as a hook, because kids have so much fun at Chuck E. Cheese and everything else. It's like, well, let's teach them about STEM and STEAM, and use projects in schools. My whole life started in shop classes in school. So how can we build a modern day shop class, which is like what they call maker spaces, but we created what's called an animaker space, where you can build a tiki bird or other animatronic figures in this classroom. So we sell to schools in order for them to have a STEM STEAM program, that when they don't, we've got them going up all over the place. In fact, I'm going Tuesday in a couple of days to Kansas City. We just installed one in Kansas City, where Walt really got started, and we've
Mhm.
got them going in Boston and Arizona. We've got a bunch out here. One just opened out in Desert Sands out here in Yorba Linda, and we're opening these animaker spaces, and kids can build animatronic birds using high-tech equipment, CNC machines, rapid prototype machines, vacuum formers, all kinds of fancy equipment that they use in production nowadays. They learn SolidWorks on computers, so they can do CAD, so they can do parts. So as part of that, we've also developed a concept for animatronic consumer products, where kids can take these home. So you can buy a bird in a box, basically like a tiki bird at Disneyland. You put it on your kitchen table, and you can put it together and do the electronics and do the mechanical and program it and paint it, and do a whole project that you can turn on, push a button, and it talks to you and it talks to your family, and you can hook birds together and make a whole tiki room if you want to. So it's the first time a consumer product has ever been done that is really a full-blown animatronic figure as a consumer product. So it'll be out, by the end of the year, just into next year. We've been promoting it at some of the D23s, kind of getting email lists of people that are interested, So anybody that's interested out here can go on our website and tell us you're interested in what we're doing. It's called Tropitronics, or you can go on the main website, garnerholt.com, but go through our education link. But it'll be out soon, and we're really excited about it. I think a lot of kids are going to enjoy it, and they're going to learn a lot. But if I can say one more thing, it's all about career paths. So what we're trying to do is introduce kids to all kinds of different new things that are involved in STEM and STEAM, so they see all these career paths. When you come into our building on a tour, we tour between 120 and 240 kids a day through this place on field trips.
What?
Yeah, this building's 120,000 square feet. So we have tour guides across the street in the building, and they tour kids and everything. And the whole point is to show them all the different careers that are in here, like 50 different careers that build an animatronic figure, mechanical and CAD and costuming and sculpting and, all these different things. And, at least have the kids go away with, and maybe build a Tiki bird while they're at it, but have them go away with the feeling that, wow, there's something really here that I enjoyed. I really like doing the electronics. I like doing the coding, and maybe that leads into some careers. So it's all about the career paths for kids. And that's what we're trying to get everybody, hepped up on, using animatronics as a lead into it.
I mean, you think about it though, like that's kind of how you got started when you were a kid with the Haunted Mansion. And we just talked to, former Imagineer Jim Schul in our last episode about Disney park maps and fun maps. And I mean, he shared the story that, from when he was a young boy, I think he was 6 or 7, and had the fun map on his wall, that he knew from that point that that's what he wanted to do. So you're creating quite the legacy and hopefully passing on that love and enthusiasm into this type of industry.
Well, when I started, it was very obviously a spark. It was when I went to Disneyland, somehow I got sprinkled some pixie dust on me somehow, and I came home, and I basically was intent that that's what I was going to do the rest of my life. And if I'm trying to take some of the kids that really have not done a lot other than poke around on their iPhones most of their lives, and show them that, hey, there's things you do with your hands, there's things you can build, there's things you can code electronically, and there's all kinds of fun things you can do with building things mechanically and designing and all this kind of stuff. And kids don't know, kids can't consider careers if they don't know they exist, right? So we're trying to like say, wow, this is a lot of fun. Look at all the things you can build. So that's our thing right now. I'm really into the animatronics education at this point right now. I'm really think in the next few years it's going to blast off big time.
Well, toward that end, though, and don't get me wrong, I love that you're working this side of the street, the STEAM, the STEM, that sort of thing. But if we could shift for just the attention a moment, also want to talk about the work you've done with the military, and in fact, the stuff that you've created that is helping keep our men and women overseas safe, the training facilities you've helped put together.
Yeah, we were approached by the military some time ago, probably 10 years ago, and they wanted to put together a facility. They had a facility. It's really quite an advanced concept. Imagine being in the Pirates of the Caribbean, and you're in boats, and you have to get off of the boats, and the pirates are almost real, and you have to literally fight them, almost like life and death type thing. And they can shoot you and you can shoot them and things like that. The military embarked on a thing that they would put young soldiers that really are very green and put them in an experience that seemed like an Afghani village and some other different types of village, and then have them run into scenarios. They would run into people in scenarios, and kids and adults, and things that would happen. You say, well, running into a kid, what's that going to accomplish? Well, a lot of kids have wires on them, and they have explosives on them, and they're decoys. So we would introduce them to a lot of tricks that would get pulled on them in the battlefield and battle arenas. So, you stick your head around a wall, or you do this, or you do this, and they would film the whole thing. the military used to have projections of these people, and it would be, and the soldiers don't have any fear of the projections. In your mind, it's hard to take that seriously. You walk around the corner and there's a projection of a assailant, and it's kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm going to shoot him. But they tried animatronics. They can't have a lot of people in these things because there's explosives and there are real things happening. They're really shooting these pellets, which are powerful. And so they can't have children. They can't have old people. So what they would do is they would put our figures in there. So what they found out with our figures, they come around a corner and there's a figure standing there. They found out that the soldiers were actually afraid of them because the figures could do a lot of things. We had figures that could pull knives, pull guns. We had some that could throw grenades. We had kids that would jump up and they'd be wired for explosives. We had animals. We had guns that would pop out of a window. A lot of different scenarios that they came up with that would be training scenarios. It's kind of funny. A lot of the soldiers would go through, and I think they knew they were animatronic, but they didn't know what they were capable of because they could do some interesting things. We had them that could like run forward at you and swing around at you, and so they were just as afraid of them as they were real people. And they would shoot them, and they could fall over. Our animatronics would fall over dead, and then they could go over and check them to make sure they were dead. There's a couple different methods that you check a body to make sure it's dead, and then they'd leave, and then the figure could pop back up for the next group, just like in a theme park. So two things you think about that is, one, it's very unfortunate that we have to do that at all, right? But when you got a bunch of green kids that 18-year-old kid that's not done much other than play with his phone, and you throw a rifle in his arms and say you're going over to Afghanistan or some country, and these people are planning on you coming over there and tricking you and making sure that I keep saying Afghanistan. That was a long time ago, but I know we're not fighting them now. But you're basically helping to save their lives. And I was happy in a bad situation to be able to say the things we were doing were contributing to training these kids to save their lives. And to me, it was worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think we need to switch gears to a little bit a high note as we're kind of coming to the end of today's episode. But is there what has been your favorite project that you've worked on over the years? I mean, it sounds like you have just done an immense amount of cool and interesting work. But what's been your favorite? What do you hold near and dear to your heart?
Well, it depends on the decade. Uncle Sam really got me connected with Disney. Chuck E. Cheese turned a little building into a giant building. A lot of major projects like, Radiator Springs and obviously Jack Skellington for the Haunted Mansion. That was the first time that any outside company ever put a full-blown high-end animatronic in a classic Disney attraction. It had never been done before.
Oh, wow.
And they were really uncertain about that, but then that opened the door for many other things. Probably the biggest thing was I built a unicycle riding robot that I worked on way back in the beginning after Uncle Sam. And it was something I figured out. It was like a mechanical magic trick. And it was... most people couldn't figure it out. Even the top people at Disney couldn't figure out how it worked. And that got me my first big theme park job with what was MGM out in Vegas. And if I hadn't have done him, I basically, through a whole series of crazy events, got to be in front of the chairman of the board of the company, which is MGM, which is building the largest hotel in the world and a small theme park. It's no longer there. But I got 15 minutes in front of the guy that was running the whole thing, and he said, by seeing my video of unicycle rider Wendell, he said, if you can do that, you can do all the figures in our ride. And I got to build all the figures for the largest ride in the park, and that was the first theme park job I ever had. I didn't have any experience. I had no employees, never worked in a theme park, never built anything professionally, and outside of some small things. And so I learned a lot real fast, but we were the first company done on site, and he introduced me to all his Vegas friends, and I started working for Prim on State Line, and I even worked on some Vegas musicals. So, you just keep forging ahead and doing things that, you try to impress and just keep rolling. But Wendell was a big part of my leaping forward.
And it's so funny. I remember going to one of the open houses you had at your old San Bernardino facility, and Wendell was out front. I had no idea he was the guy who, or the figure that sort of plowed the road for you.
He's been in mothballs for a while, but we're kind of redoing him in a new higher tech way with fully electric and everything. So we're hoping to have him out soon. So when we have tours and other galas and events, we're going to be able to have him present and have people see him.
All right, that is so cool. Well, Garner, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show today, and again, we could talk animatronics and your history in the industry all day, but unfortunately, we're out of time.
Well, it's been fun.
So, Garner, where can people follow along with what's going on with Garner Holt Productions?
Well, we have some cool stuff on YouTube. Some of the things that we've done here, a few years back, we did a Lincoln head that was an example of our expressive face technology. There's a whole slew of stuff, new and old, on YouTube. Look under Garner Holt or Garner Holt Lincoln or Garner Holt Productions. And then on garnerholt.com, unfortunately, our website's a little dated, but we're trying to redo our websites. And once you get on the main one, garnerholt.com, you can go onto the education, which is education through imagination. You go to our foundation, you can go to see other things. You'll be able to know about our birds and things that are coming out. So if you go on our website and take a look, or look up Garner Holt Productions on Facebook, we have a Facebook site, so.
Well, all right. Again, Garner, thank you again for coming on. And and as we do our standard show closer, just want to remind folks, be sure to follow myself and Lauren over on X, Facebook, and Instagram to stay up to date for all things Disney merch wise and more. You don't want to miss any of our upcoming episodes.
Yes, and don't forget, we love hearing from you. If you have questions or suggestions for future episodes, you can reach out on social media or at Lauren at laurenhersey.com or Jim at jimhillmedia.com. And coming up on our next episode of I Want That Too, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the history of the relationship with Disney and Macy's leading right up to the Thanksgiving Day parade. So we're really excited about that, and we hope you'll join us.
And again, thanks again to Mr. Holt. And thanks also to all you folks for tuning in. And we will see you next time on I Want That Too.